Donald Trump's impact on the U.S. economy is complex. That's just to say the least. It's shit. It being multifaceted and highly polarizing in terms of the analysis and public perception, his influence can be examined in two broad phases: his career as a businessman and the reality. He's a TV personality of pre 2016 and in his term as president in 2017 and 2021. Man, that's just more shit. As a private businessman and a cultural figure, you've got to be truly insane there. Branding, oh, that's just complete shit. The art of the deal, man, when did that ever happen? Trump built his personal brand synonymously with luxury, wealth, and deal making. This brand, promoted through books, TV, oh, we all remember The Apprentice and his licensing deals. He shaped public perception of himself as a successful tycoon. No, he wishes he was a tycoon, which later became a cornerstone of his political appeal. Real estate development, his projects, the Trump Tower, golf courses, hotels, he had localized his economic impacts, creating construction jobs, altering skylines, and catering to high end markets. However, his business career was also marked by multiple bankruptcies. The casinos and the hotels. We all remember all the lawsuits that are passed and still ongoing, and his reliance on a complex debt and finance in which critics cited as evidence of volatility rather than steady stewardship. Mm. Economic commentary. Also, as a public figure, he was frequently commented on economic issues, often portraying the U.S. as a losing nation in the global trade, and the narratives of his resonant in certain industry reasons, and that laid the groundwork for his political reform. As a president, this all started in 2017 and is still going on now. But his first presidency, that ended in 2021, his administration's policies, enacted with a Republican Congress for the first 2 years, had direct and significant effects. Major policies and impacts pre pandemic. These tax cuts and jobs acts in 2017, the signature legislative achievements, proponents argue, it spurred economic growth, led to record high stock markets, lowered unemployment to 50-year lows pre pandemic, and increasing business investment. They're credited with boosting consumers and business confidence. Critics argue benefits disproportionately favored corporations and wealthy, and they increased the national debt by estimating $1.9 trillion and failed to produce a sustained long term growth boost promised. They contended it did little to raise the middle class wages meaningfully beyond the previous trends. Hmm. Deregulation, a major focus across sections for finance, the environment, energy, telecommunications. Proponents argue it reduces burdens and businesses, spurs fossil fuel production, making the U.S. a net exporter, and fostered innovation. Critics argue it rolled back crucial protections in climate, finance, remember Dodd-Frank, and workplace safety, creating long-term risks for financial stability, public health, and the environment. For trade policy, a radical departure from the post-World War II consensus. Tariffs imposed on billions worth of imports from China, the EU, Canada, and others, like steel and aluminum. The USMCA replaced NAFTA, the NFFTA for everyone else, with modest updates in digital trade, labor, and auto rules. The impact of these things, the trade war with China, which was highly disrupted. It provided temporary protections for some industries like steel, but still hurt our farmers. That led to massive bailouts for them. It should have, but the manufacturers relying on these inputs and the consumers through higher prices paid, and I'll say the consumers paid the biggest cost there. The manufacturers, sort of in the middle. It also created an uncertainty for global supply chains. The immigration policies aimed for restricting both legal and illegal immigration. Proponents argue tightened labor markets could theoretically push up wages for low-income workers. Critics argue it harmed agricultural, hospitality, and tech sectors, facing labor shortages, reduced immigration long-term positive impacts on economic growth and innovation created humanitarian crises. The COVID-19 pandemic and economic response in 2020, this is the defining economic event of his final year. Unprecedented physical stimulus, the administration oversaw bipartisan relief packages, the CARES Act, that provided payments, expanded unemployment benefits, and the Paycheck Protections Act, the PPP. Widely credited with preventing a full-scale depression, supporting households and businesses, and fueling rapidly through uneven recovery even into 2020. Management critique. Critics argue the administration early handling of the pandemic expected the economic damage leading to the deeper shutdowns and more severe recession into the quarter two of 2020 than was necessary. Federal Reserve Reservation acts the federal slashed rate to zero and intervene and massively into markets actions supporting the administration, which helps stabilize financial systems. Overall, the assessment and legacy arguments for a positive economic impact oversaw in a perfect period, which was very low. The unemployment was dropped, sort of, and a strong stock market truly did perform then. And it was prior to the pandemic, sort of. Deregulations and stocks cuts boosted businesses' confidence and investment in the short term, shifting the dialogue to trade focus more onto the American workers and China practices, leading to the bipartisan skepticism of China. Rapid vaccine development and the Operation Warp Speed was the key factor to enabling 2021 economic rebound. The arguments for the negative and mixed economic impact, pre-pandemic growth largely continued on trends from the Obama recovery because he was the prior president. See, most of us forgetting all of this. like that, everything from our presidencies take 4 years to actually take place and to be like spread out throughout to take effect like a ripple. And the slower and more redundant those systems are, it takes longer and longer and longer because these things called latencies are inherent in everything. It's a universal fact. So, the pre pandemic growth that largely continued trends from the Obamacare recovery tax cut growth boost was short lived. Trade wars created losers, increased costs, and failed to significantly reduce trade debts and deficits by bringing large scale manufacturing, increased national debt dramatically, even before the pandemic. Policies often exacerbated inequality and regional divides. The pandemic recession was the deepest since the Great Depression. Through the recovery was swift due to stimulus. Consensus is among economics, can't get the word out of my mouth, but economists, his pre-pandemic economy was solid, but not historically exceptional. It was a growth rate. His trade policy was widely viewed as inefficient and costly. This 2017 tax cut did not pay for themselves and added substantial to the debt. The physical response to COVID was necessary and powerful. It impacted perfectly targeted. In summary, Trump's economic impact is defined by significant short term stimulus effects through his tax cuts, deregulation, and pandemic spending, coupled with long term costs, higher debt trade, disruption now, the regulation uncertainty, and his deeply polarizing legacy. No, that is not what we're going to end with at all. His legacy is still ongoing. His legacy currently has to do with money and money, and that's all he really wants. Money and power is all he really wants. Some of us don't really care about that. But peace is a costly thing.